Just before Miltia is sealed away, Sellers and Margulis, both wounded, manage to launch the Song of Nephilim and the emulators into space, with a number of people on board. Kevin, Albedo, and several Kirschwassers are included. In addition, Margulis' apprentice Pellegri was also present on the Song of Nephilim. She too has a history with Jin Uzuki. She was his former lover. As Mizrahi planned, the entire planet, including Omega and the Zohar, became inaccessible. Two massive black holes had appeared on either side of Miltia, and this area became known as the Abyss, and was declared off-limits by the Galaxy Federation. Soon after, the survivors of the tragedy were then transported to a replacement planet, aptly named Second Miltia. On the final day of the Miltian conflict, Momo Mizrahi was born on the Proto-Merkaba in Miltian airspace, never having met her father. Based on her framework, the 100 series observational units began mass production. Upon their return to the Yuriev Institute, Dmitri instructs Negredo to kill Rubido for his failures on Miltia. Negredo refuses and shoots Yuriev, killing him instead. Unbeknownst to Negredo, Yuriev's consciousness sleeps deep within him, waiting for the perfect time to return. Rubido and Negredo leave the Institute with the help of Commander Helmer and become wards of the Second Miltian government. Over the course of several years, Helmer rises through the ranks of the administration and works with the boys to create the Kukai Foundation, a massive business venture and space colony. Their main goal is to completely snuff out the remains of Utik. In service of this goal, the Foundation was legally granted control of 11 out of the 12 Zohar emulators to ensure that they were no longer misused. The 12th emulator was somehow still in Utik's possession. In order to conceal their identities as URTVs, the boys would take on new names. Negredo became Guinan Kukai, and Rubido Guinan Kukai Jr., the adopted son of Guinan. Rubido is typically referred to just as Junior in order to keep this ruse up. The name Guinan comes from a cat that the boys used to care for as children. To make the story more convincing, but also because of his immense trauma, Junior completely halts his cellular growth, which results in him remaining in the body of a child indefinitely. This causes many of his close associates to refer to him as Little Master, to differentiate him from Negredo, who is typically referred to as Master Guinan. Rubido and Negredo both mistakenly believe that they are the only remaining URTVs, assuming that all others perished during the Miltian conflict. In the absence of Dmitri, Citrine would remain at the Yuriev Institute along with the rest of the Salvatores until his return. Albedo is found by Utik on the Song of Nephilim and would become a key asset to their goals through his regeneration abilities and his recent contact with Udu. In the months that followed, the blame for the entirety of the Miltian conflict lay at the feet of Joachim Mizrahi. Despite his countermeasures, Gnosis continued to flood into the real number domain, far past the confines of the Abyss. The truth of what actually happened on Miltia was obscured by Utik and, by extent, Ormus. In fact, the entire travesty had been orchestrated specifically by Patriarch Sergius XVII and Cardinal Heinlein, the latter being Wilhelm's secret persona as head of the religion. Every single direction taken was exactly as Wilhelm planned. Kanan and the Galaxy Federation were unable to decrypt the Y data stolen by Jin, and the only other known copy was located inside of Momo. Sellers, however, was able to steal much of Mizrahi's remaining work, using it to begin development on his own inferior Zohar emulator. In 4754, the Subcommittee on Close Encounters, or SOCE, was founded on 5th Jerusalem. This group of individuals was brought together by the Galaxy Federation in order to develop anti-Gnosis strategies. One of the highest-ranking members just so happens to be Joachim Mizrahi's estranged wife, Yuli Mizrahi. The Gnosis had become a permanent and dangerous issue post-Miltian conflict that required a swift and effective response. AIMS units had been outfitted with tech in order to combat Gnosis to mixed success. These machines were then dubbed Anti-Gnosis Weapon Systems, or AIGS. Since this acronym is pronounced EGS, it is surmised that the person who named these is a descendant of the absolute moron who named AIMS. To also assist in harming the Gnosis, the Hilbert effect is developed. In the most simplistic terms, the Hilbert effect generates waves that are able to pull Gnosis into the real number domain and temporarily chain them there. The subcommittee also dropped the Proto-Merkaba into the Abyss to disallow any possible linkage with the Song of Nephilim, which was still in Utik's possession. After much debate, the decision to sign the Life Recycling Act into law was overturned. The reasons for doing so are mostly attributed to individuals with genetic modification needing excessive resources to comfortably support their health. This led to many conflicts over planets that were habitable for these types of people, and so the act was repealed. All reanimated cyborgs currently in operation still remain property of Ziggurat Industries, but the creation of new ones is no longer permitted under law. Tangential to this, the government began reintegrating uberhumans into normal society. Further neural experimentation was done to attempt to alter the murderous minds of the soldiers. This process was largely successful, with the exception of one Commander Andrew Cherenkov. Unable to cope with life off the battlefield, Cherenkov would eventually kill a civilian in a post-traumatic stress disorder-related incident. For his trial, he was assigned a lawyer who fought tooth and nail to help him avoid capital punishment. She argued that Andrew was unable to control his own impulses due to the experimentation allowed by the Life Recycling Act. This defense proved successful, and Cherenkov was instead sentenced to undergo Level 7 personality reconditioning. This process would attempt to correct his behavior by implanting nanomachines into his brain, followed by a cocktail of mood-stabilizing drugs. After the trial, Cherenkov would actually become engaged with and marry the lawyer who represented him. Soon after their marriage, Cherenkov would discover that his wife had been having virtual sex behind his back. During the ensuing argument, she would reveal that she never really cared about him, and only married him to obtain a license to clone herself a daughter. In a fit of rage, Cherenkov killed her, completely bypassing his Level 7 personality reconditioning. The court found him guilty once again. He was stripped of his human rights, remanded to the ownership of the Federation, and sentenced to undergo Level 8 personality reconditioning. This too proved to be unsuccessful, but for good reason. On a 1,000,000,000 chance encounter, Cherenkov actually came face to face with the clone of his late wife. The girl said just a single word to him.
Garbage.
Unsurprisingly, he did not react well to this and strangled the girl to death. After his failures with both Level 7 and 8 personality reconditioning, he was sentenced to undergo the new and experimental Level 9 procedure. Despite the work of countless professionals, Cherenkov still failed to respond to any treatment, and he killed everyone in the facility. After this catastrophic failure, it was clear that something else needed to be done. So Margulis, intrigued by Cherenkov's story, decided someone like him would be useful to Ormus, and brought him under his command. In 4763, to prevent any incidents like the Miltian conflict from ever occurring again, the Miltian Charter is enacted. The Charter gives Realians basic human rights, with the Federation reasoning that their mistreatment led to much of the bloodshed on Miltia. However, the Charter requires all Realians to be equipped with a remote-activated self-destruct feature that can be triggered as needed by a senior officer. In 4765, the crew of the cargo passenger ship Zenta are hired to do a life-changing job. The Zenta's crew consists of Captain Matthews, an ex-Marine, Hammer, the navigator, and Tony, their pilot. Their job is to transport software 200,000 light-years away to the planet Eliade. The job's completion is going to fetch them a pretty penny. The client, Hayes Porter Services, has given them a 1-week deadline to make the delivery. Matthews is unsure if the Zenta can handle the job, and so they are provided with one of the fastest ships in the galaxy, the Lundgren-class ship known as the Elsa von Brabant. Before they shove off, they encounter none other than Chaos in a nearby casino. After winning game after game against Matthews, Chaos asks him to abandon the job entirely for their own protection. He'll even return what he's won from them and pay them the same amount that their client will if they agree to abandon the job. Captain Matthews is confused as to why a complete stranger would approach them like this, but is willing to hear Chaos out. Chaos has spent the past several years working with the Kukai Foundation, and believes that the shipment on the Elsa is connected to Utic. After some back and forth, Chaos eventually convinces the captain to allow him to accompany them on their journey. The trip is smooth sailing until they're about 24 hours out from their destination. They're stopped by Federation police under suspicion of carrying contraband. The software is indeed criminal in nature, and under Chaos's direction, they flee the scene and outrun the Federation. Unfortunately for the crew, they destroy some of the Kukai Foundation's property in the escape, and rack up a debt of almost $10 million. In order to pay Guinan back, Captain Matthews, Hammer, and Tony begin working for the Foundation using the Elsa. Chaos officially joins their crew and works as their muscle. At Vector, Wilhelm has begun the final phases of his plan for an eternal recurrence. Kevin is appointed chief engineer of the 1st R&D Division and is instructed to begin construction on an anti-Gnosis weapon known as KOS-MOS. The android will be equipped with state-of-the-art technology, an extremely powerful Hilbert effect emitter, and her very own phase transfer cannon. The acronym KOS-MOS stands for KOS-MOS Obey Strategical Multiple Operations System. While destroying Gnosis is certainly something KOS-MOS will be capable of, her true purpose, known only by Kevin and Wilhelm, is to be the new vessel for the long-deceased Mary Magdalene's soul. Kevin decides that this android will have a female form, the main reason being that it just makes sense for the soul of Mary, but also because he noticed how women are historically seen as protectors. During the work on Project KOS-MOS, Shion Uzuki, now 20, is hired by Vector and personally placed into 1st Division by Kevin. Her intellectual prowess, among other things, catches Kevin's attention and the two become very close, eventually entering into a relationship. The relationship becomes so serious that Kevin gives Shion his mother's pendant, the only thing he owns to remember her by. After months of headway into their work, the first KOS-MOS model, KOS-MOS Archetype, was nearing completion. Unfortunately, tragedy would soon strike the development team. A group of Utic agents led by a masked Andrew Cherenkov managed to gain access to KOS-MOS's controls, and they activated the android. Almost immediately, the archetype began mercilessly attacking everyone in the room. In the confusion, Kevin Winnicott was stabbed in the chest by KOS-MOS and bled out in front of Shion. Shion grabs a gun and shoots the archetype in the head, stopping the rampage. Multiple UTIC and Vector personnel were killed that day, in addition to Kevin. This set the KOS-MOS project back significantly, since Kevin knew more about her construction than anyone else. Traumatized that another person close to her was killed right before her eyes, Shion pushes her feelings down to block out the pain, throwing herself into her work. She's chosen as Kevin's successor and becomes the new chief of 1st Division. Her coworker and friend Alan Ridgely takes her previous position as junior chief engineer, and for the next 2 years, they work to get the KOS-MOS project back on track. Alan is quite intelligent to be sure, since he worked alongside both Kevin and Shion in 1st Division, but he has a hard time expressing himself emotionally. He's had intense feelings for Shion since before her and Kevin even began dating. However, now that he has a chance to act on those feelings, he has trouble putting them into words, partially because of how soon after Kevin's death it is, and also because of his awkward nature. He even hesitates calling Shion by her first name, only ever referring to her as Chief. For now, he supports her in any way he can as a close friend. Despite the fact the KOS-MOS killed Kevin, Shion does not hold it against her. Instead, she elects to think of KOS-MOS as something that still connects her to Kevin, and so she works to perfect Kevin's magnum opus rather than doing it for her own benefit. The archetype frame is abandoned, and KOS-MOS's core programming is placed inside a new one. This version of the android is known as KOS-MOS version 1. To ensure that no one is harmed again during the development of KOS-MOS, all further experiments are only ever conducted during dives into her mind, also referred to as the encephalon. The consequence of this is that no one on the team knows exactly how KOS-MOS will perform in a real-world situation. In 4767, UTIC attempts yet another Zohar link experiment, this time led by Andrew Cherenkov. Margulis had assigned him to this mission specifically to test his loyalty to Ormus. The people of the planet Ariadne would be doomed regardless of the experiment's success or failure, and Cherenkov would have to grapple with that. This experiment was performed with the only remaining emulator in their possession, and just like every other time that humans attempt to harness this power, it ended in calamity. Ariadne did not just disappear like all the others, though. It shifted into the imaginary number domain and transformed into a massive planet-sized gnosis called the Cathedral Ship. Though a number of ships were able to escape the calamity, one of which Cherenkov was present on, billions of citizens were killed when the disaster happened. In the place of Ariadne, the Zohar emulator that led to its destruction lay adrift. Upon hearing of the planet's disappearance, the Galaxy Federation orders a fleet of ships to investigate the area and bring back anything they find. The lead ship, the Woglinde, is also transporting KOS-MOS and her development team, who are finally nearing the project's completion. The hope is, should an incident with the Gnosis arise, that KOS-MOS will be fully operational and able to defend the passengers on board. Andrew Cherenkov, due to his affiliation with Ormus, manages to secure a place on the ship. When the Woglinde arrives at Ariadne's former location, all that they're able to find is the Zohar emulator. Unsure of what exactly the object is, one of the people deployed to retrieve it touches the emulator, and they are completely atomized. After that, immense care is taken to move the object onto the ship and away from the general population. As this retrieval is happening, 1st Division is conducting their final experiments on KOS-MOS within the encephalon. Accompanying her through the process, much to Alan's chagrin, is Shion. Alan feels that it isn't safe for her to be inside the encephalon with KOS-MOS, since if something were to go wrong, Shion could actually die. However, Shion brushes aside his concerns and reiterates her belief that the results will be far more accurate with her involved. Alan's fears become reality as KOS-MOS's encephalon becomes unstable, which puts Shion's life in grave danger. Shion refuses Alan's request to leave and continues with the combat experiment. Luckily, at the last second, Alan dives in after her and physically pulls Shion out, saving her life. Right before Alan's heroic act, though, a young girl appeared before Shion. someone she had never seen before. This girl was Nephilim Verum. Back in reality, Alan gets on his hands and knees and begs Xion to stop risking her life in this way, though she doesn't take this display of emotion for what it is, genuine concern for her well-being. At this time, the Woglinde initiates and concludes a jump through hyperspace. As a matter of fact, this is the second to last scheduled jump, and in just 7.5 hours they plan to make one final jump to land at home base. After a brief conversation with the bridge, Captain Moriyama sends a request to Xion. She's to bring her data directly to him once it's ready. Before she leaves for the bridge, however, one of her subordinates asks if it's okay to keep bringing the higher-ups virtual data instead of the real thing. She doesn't really have an answer for him, but it's clear that she's still traumatized over the incident that led to Kevin's death. A short while after Xion leaves for the bridge, Alan realizes that she actually left behind the data disk and attempts to catch up to her. While Xion walks through the ship, she comes upon the hangar that the Zohar emulator is being kept in. Alongside the emulator is Lieutenant Commander Vanderkam, yet another UTIC plant. On the Woglinde, he's the leader of the team in charge of the retrieval, and is currently beating his subordinates senselessly for the loss they suffered during the operation. As she watches him land blow after blow on his men, she thinks of Kevin, and how he ran 1st Division in a much more gentle manner. When she's done daydreaming, Xion notices the emulator in the room. Nephilim appears in front of it, and slowly, as if in a trance, Xion starts walking towards her.
Look out! Watch it, you slacker! Only authorized personnel are allowed up here. I've had 3 people vanish on me already. Get the hell out of here! My men will start slacking off if they see bimbos like you around.
I'm so sorry.
Who's the idiot that let civilians on this ship? What the hell are you staring at? Oh. Damn slacker!
Alan finally manages to catch up with Xion and hands her the data she left behind. The two walk together briefly, but are interrupted when Xion's help is requested in the Realian maintenance lab. Despite the fact that she does not have the required permission to work with them, she decides to head on over to help, which disappoints Alan, who was intending on asking her out to dinner. After finishing her work on the Realians, Xion mentions to the lead engineer that after KOS-MOS is finished, she'd like to eventually transfer out of 1st Division and into 3rd. Surprised to hear someone willing to give up the opportunity to work alongside the best of the best, he asks why. She explains that she wants to learn as much about Realians as she can. While she's saying this, Lieutenant Luis Virgil enters the room and begins spouting racist remarks about Realians. As much as Xion tries to defend them, she's left speechless when Virgil points out that they're still only considered equipment, regardless of what the Miltian Charter says about their rights. During their conversation, Xion also notices that Virgil has all the hallmark signs of DME addiction, a debilitating mental and physical illness caused by the consumption of Realian flesh. The engineer in the room explains that Virgil wasn't always like this, but after the Miltian conflict, he changed. Xion does not hold any ill will towards Realians for what happened. Rather, she hopes that they can move forward and learn from it for the sake of humans and Realians. Xion gets another notification reminding her that her presence is required on the bridge, and she rushes over. On the bridge, Sharenkov lays into her about KOS-MOS still not having any actual combat data. Moriyama comes to her defense, though, and points out how 1st Division is hard at work under quite a lot of pressure. He recommends that Xion and her team take their time and finish KOS-MOS when she's ready. In another room, Cherenkov gets a call from Margulis berating him for the lives lost during the emulator's retrieval. He tells Cherenkov that they have detected Gnosis activity heading to their position and that reinforcements will take some time to get to the Woglinde. He demands that the emulator be kept away from them at all costs and cuts contact. Since she was given the rest of the day off by Captain Moriyama, Shion heads back to her room and has a short call with her brother Jin. After a bit of bickering, she hangs up on him and takes a nap. While she sleeps, Nephilim watches her. Meanwhile, the Gnosis close in on the Woglinde's position, and KOS-MOS begins waking up. All on her own, she has bypassed the activation protocol installed by Shion. First Division is in a frenzy, since they don't know for sure if they'll have control over her when she leaves her pod. Shion wakes up to all the alarms and rushes out of her room, but is stopped dead in her tracks when the ship's blast doors begin closing. She starts breaking down, terrified that KOS-MOS is going to go on a rampage again. At this point, the bridge has detected the Gnosis heading towards them, but before they can do anything about it, a fleet of innumerable Gnosis gate jump right on top of them. The ship goes into full lockdown as the Combat Realians and Aegis units are deployed to combat the immediate threat. Despite all the work that Alan and the rest of the team put in, they cannot stop KOS-MOS from waking up. She slowly climbs out of the pod and scans the entire ship with the intent of locating Shion and the Zohar. All of 1st Division quakes in fear as she slowly walks towards them, but she truly means no harm and manages to help all of them get to escape pods, with the exception of Alan, who decides to accompany KOS-MOS to Shion's location. As their attack intensifies, the Gnosis reach the bridge and blow it up, completely toppling any sense of command. Cherenkov was not on the bridge, however, and was running towards the hangar containing the emulator. He plans to eject the entire block out of the ship and gate jump the emulator away from the area, knowing full well he will die if successful. Ignoring the warnings and sirens, Shion runs as fast as her legs can move. As she turns a corner, Virgil's entire squad fires rounds at her, mistaking her for a Gnosis. Luckily, none of the shots actually hit her. Just as Shion gets behind the Aegis, the Gnosis attack the corridor. Unfortunately, nothing at their disposal is able to put a dent in their forces. Desperate, Virgil snatches Shion's communication device from her and uses it to tap into the programming of the Realians in the room. He forces all of them to crawl to the Gnosis and intends to blow all of them up when the time is right. Shion demands that he stop, but Virgil will not listen. He's too set in his ways to be convinced, and even uses her logic against her in the argument. In the end, she is powerless to stop him, and he triggers the explosion which sends the Gnosis down to the floor below. It's completely pointless though, because all of them simply float back up and resume their attack on the 2 remaining people in the room. They manage to grab both Shion and touch Virgil, essentially dooming them. Shion's life flashes before her eyes, and yet again Nephilim briefly appears before her. Something about her presence seems to protect Shion from the Gnosis, and she's largely unaffected by their touch. At that moment, KOS-MOS blasts through the wall and saves both Shion and Virgil in a magnificent display of combat. After activating the largest scale Hilbert effect ever seen, she makes quick work of all Gnosis that come her way. KOS-MOS, Shion, Alan, and Virgil make their way to the emulator's location and find Cherenkov there, who is still terrified of KOS-MOS after her rampage 2 years prior. While fighting off a horde of Gnosis, KOS-MOS aims her guns and shoots a barrage of bullets through Virgil, killing him simply because he was in the way of her target. When Shion, distraught and angry, scolds her for this, KOS-MOS simply explains that she is not programmed with any directives to protect military personnel, only Vector employees. She made the decision that she determined would have the highest success rate in protecting Shion and Alan. They continue defending against the Gnosis, but the emulator is taken away during the battle. KOS-MOS gets Alan and Shion into an escape pod and launches it out of the Woglinde with herself and Cherenkov on top of it. It's at this point that KOS-MOS is able to determine that this was not the original Zohar, but in fact a copy. As the Gnosis gate jump through the UMN and take the emulator with them, she's given an order from Vector to proceed to 2nd Miltia. She retrieves her service module from the wreckage and begins searching for a fast way to her destination. In the aftermath of the Wuglinde's destruction, the Elsa and her crew arrived to scavenge for any valuable materials that survived the conflict. They had heard the SOS sent out by the ships and wanted to capitalize on an event as rare as this to assist in paying their debt back. However, Guinan does not approve of activity of this nature. KOS-MOS spots the ship and floats to the window, requesting that they open a communication channel with her. She asks that they jump to 2nd Miltia immediately. Captain Matthews refuses, and KOS-MOS threatens to shatter the window of the ship. Under ordinary circumstances, she would have likely just stolen the ship to fulfill her directive, but it's possible that Xion's anger over the death of Lieutenant Virgil resonated with her, so she adjusted her methodology. Captain Matthews relents and allows KOS-MOS to board. Before heading off to 2nd Miltia, KOS-MOS contacts Xion, Alan, and Cherenkov and explains that she intends to leave them to be picked up by a rescue ship, since she's 96% sure that they'll be safe. But after Xion threatens to kill herself and Alan by opening the airlock, KOS-MOS pauses. After a little nudge by Chaos, who just woke up, it's decided that they'll be brought on board. While getting settled in, a stray Gnosis passes through the ship and grabs Cherenkov. In response, Chaos simply touches it, and it disintegrates. While everyone is stunned at this, Chaos explains that it's just something he's good at. Some people draw well, some people run fast. This is his talent. Obviously, it's his power of anima that allows him to do this, but no one here knows that. This explanation is good enough for just about everyone except Alan, who is rather angry that none of the others present are questioning what just happened. As a way of saying thanks for taking them in, Xion cooks everyone her special curry, which is a huge hit with the crew. Xion explains that, back home, Jin wouldn't do much other than sit around and read books, so much of the housework and cooking fell at her feet. After dinner, Xion, Alan, and Chaos clean the dishes. Not much of note is discussed, but Alan does make an offhanded racist comment against mutants, which Xion scolds him for. The three part ways. Xion looks for Cherenkov to bring him curry since he never came to eat, and Chaos goes to visit KOS-MOS, who is sleeping in her pod. Chaos opens the module to get a good look at KOS-MOS. There's no denying it. She looks exactly like Mary Magdalene. It's unclear how much Chaos knows about her creation, but it was obvious to him as soon as he saw her that she was connected to Mary. While she sleeps, he wishes her a good night and leaves the room. Almost immediately, Cherenkov wanders in and trembles in fear at the sight of her. The events of the archetype rampage play over and over in his head. He draws his gun and points it at her chest, but before he's able to do anything, Xion comes in with his food. She asks what he was doing with a gun in his hand, and the best he can come up with is that it's a bad habit. Fortunately for him, that's enough to convince her. They briefly talk about the death of Lieutenant Virgil, and Cherenkov attempts to console her to mixed results. As Captain Matthews and his crew begin the jump to the Miltian star system, Xion gets a call from Vector. She is informed by her co-worker Miyuki that as soon as they land on 2nd Miltia, they are to leave KOS-MOS in the care of 2nd Division and return to headquarters. This infuriates Xion, and she demands to speak to the director of R&D, who she yells at for several minutes. She doesn't feel that KOS-MOS is ready to leave 1st Division yet, especially because she doesn't listen to her. The director eventually relents and leaves the call. Miyuki says that she's so glad to see Xion since they were sent word that they were killed during the attack, and that the entire department was saddened by the news. Alan asks if anyone reacted that way about him, but it would seem that no one really noticed that he was missing. At the same time as the events on the Wuglinde are unfolding, Jan Sauer, now known as the cyborg Ziggurat 8, is summoned to the SOCE headquarters on 5th Jerusalem. He is tasked with breaking into UTIC's secret base on Pleroma and retrieving Momo, who was recently kidnapped by them. Their aim is to gain access to the Y data hiding within her. His reputation for seeking out nearly impossible jobs was a determining factor in the subcommittee selecting him. Yuli speaks very little during the meeting, likely because she has an aversion to Momo. She views her as a sort of replacement for her daughter, and that does not sit well with her. Yuli requests that, after rescuing Momo, rather than being brought back home to her, she be taken to 2nd Miltia so she won't have to see her. Ziggurat takes the job on the condition that after its completion, he is allowed to undergo a procedure to remove any and all remnants of his previous life from his brain, no matter the physical or mental cost. With the help of a cloaking device, Ziggurat easily makes his way onto the asteroid and sets a few explosive charges by the entrance. His ease of access is likely due to the Ormus double agent working at the subcommittee. They are certainly expecting him. Unfortunately, while in the belly of the beast, the device malfunctions and he becomes completely visible. He makes his way through the maze of hallways and is able to break Momo out of her cell.
Let me just confirm. You are the 100 series observational unit prototype, correct?
I don't really like that name.
Do you have another one? We'll talk later. Let's go.
Momo! Daddy calls me Momo. And then he called me Momo.
All right. Let's go, Momo.
Okay.
While hiding from the guards, Momo asks for Ziggurat's name, and dissatisfied with the person being given a model number, she decides to start calling him Ziggy instead. A memory from Jan's old life floods back to him at this moment, and he remembers a time when he got a robot dog for Joaquin. Instead of calling the dog by its production name, Nexus 6, Joaquin shortened its name to Nex. Ziggy and Momo fight through countless soldiers and eggs units before they're stopped by Morgulus, who is waiting at the entrance. After a brief battle, Ziggy sets off the charges he placed when first arriving and uses the time to steal a ship. As they disembark from the Pleroma, a number of other ships chase after them. While all of this unfolds, Albedo watches in the corner of the room, cloaked in shadow. Ziggy sends word to the subcommittee that Momo has been rescued as the two try to shake off their pursuers. Momo sets a course to the subcommittee's HQ, but Ziggy tells her that they're going to Second Miltia instead. She's very disappointed that she's unable to see Yuli, but initiates the jump to Second Miltia as she's asked. As they gate out, the Utic ships follow them into hyperspace. While Momo pilots, Ziggy returns fire with the ship's cannon. Momo sends a distress signal out, and it pings off of the Elsa, which just so happens to be using the same path through the UMN. Ziggy relays to the crew that a battle is happening, and recommends that they gate out for their own safety. It's not much of an option though, since the Elsa is directly in the line of fire from the enemy ships. Captain Matthews wants nothing to do with any of this, but his opinion changes as soon as a shot damages the outer hull of the ship. Alan is bewildered by the decision to enter the fight, since one wrong move could kill them all. Tony tells him that he's an immaculate pilot and starts returning fire against Utic. Ziggy, Momo, and Tony work together to fight back the other ships. Just as it seems like they're winning, reinforcements arrive and land a devastating shot to Ziggy and Momo's ship. As they start falling into the column wall, the both of them accept that they're going to die. But at the last second, Xion is able to use the cargo ship's crane to pull them onto the loading dock. A freak electrical issue prevents the dock from closing, so Ziggy and Momo begin to run across the dock completely exposed. Some more combat with the other ships is enough to close the dock, but not before multiple unmanned crafts are able to enter the Elsa. Xion, KOS-MOS, and Chaos make their way to the lower deck to help fight off the intruders with Momo and Ziggy. Thankfully, with their combined efforts, they're able to destroy all enemy units. After the battle, the group gets to know each other over drinks and realizes that they're all headed to Second Miltia. Before they're able to resume their journey, though, they need to make repairs on the ship, and so they stop at a nearby dock colony. Cherenkov is able to slip away and communicate with Morgulus. He explains that, although he does not have the Zohar emulator in his possession, he is currently traveling with the 100 series prototype. Morgulus orders that he return to base and to forget about Momo before hanging up. Albedo, who was listening in on the conversation, tells Morgulus that he'll retrieve Momo for him. He's been toying with the Kirschwassers from Miltia for over a decade, and now he wants the real deal. Upon making it to the dock colony, Cherenkov leaves the Elsa to find a flight elsewhere. When Matthews hears about this, he's visibly worried. The dock colony that they've stopped at has a terrible history with the military, and Cherenkov will stick out like a sore thumb with his uniform. Sure enough, he's brought to an alleyway and pushed around by some locals. Cherenkov's personality reprogramming fails, and he violently attacks the men, nearly killing all of them. Back at the ship after takeoff, he makes up a story about how they all did that to each other and how he managed to slip away. Ziggy asks Momo to do some routine maintenance on his body and explains that he's actually embarrassed of what he describes as his patchwork mechanical body, and he doesn't want human women to look him over. Throughout the rest of the day, Cherenkov's physical health begins declining heavily. He realizes that he's feeling the effects of the touch of the Gnosis. Slowly but surely, he is turning into a Gnosis. While Shion sleeps, Nephilim visits her again and vaguely refers to Cherenkov's condition and that she may be able to finally understand him when he dies. She's awoken when the ship begins violently shaking. KOS-MOS is able to determine that there's something attempting to pull them out of hyperspace, and indeed, the Elsa is forcibly removed from its gate jump. This turns out to be the Gnosis, and millions of them surround the ship. On Shion's order, KOS-MOS activates an ultra-wide-range Hilbert effect. This reaches over 1 astronomical unit away, and every single Gnosis in the area is pulled into the real number domain. Despite Tony's best efforts to steer the ship away, they're absorbed into the largest one in the area, the planet-sized Gnosis known as the Cathedral Ship. Meanwhile, Junior is on a mission. Accompanying him are Mary and Shelley Godwin, who are 2 uberhuman sisters with the ability to transmit their thoughts to each other, among other things. Together with the crew of the Kukai Foundation's flagship, the Durandal, they've been investigating the disappearance of Ariadne and are shocked to find absolutely nothing in the area, not even particles from an explosion. While looking around the area, Junior and Mary are ambushed by Utic drones ordered to destroy any evidence of the wreckage. They're able to return to the Durandal and destroy nearly all the reinforcements with its enormous laser cannon. Before the mothership can escape, they ram the front of the Durandal directly into it and begin boarding. Junior, Mary, and a group of combat Realians fight through the ship until they reach the bridge. Mary plugs herself into the computer's mainframe and begins transmitting the data to Shelley. Unfortunately, during a brief gunfight with some Utic grunts, the cable is shot and all the data is lost. After returning back to the Durandal, they're able to detect the pulses used by the Gnosis to wrestle the Elsa from hyperspace, and they head to the source of the energy. Shion wakes up in the cathedral ship alongside KOS-MOS, Ziggy, Momo, and Chaos. The Elsa and the others are nowhere to be seen. Together, the group presses onward towards 2 different signals that KOS-MOS has picked up. One from the Elsa, and one similar to that of the Zohar emulator taken off the Woglinde. While they make their way to their destination, they notice that there are a number of man-made objects inside this Gnosis. Signs, walkways, and even buildings litter the cathedral ship, making them all wonder what exactly the nature of a Gnosis is. Finally, the party approaches what seems to be the center of this massive Gnosis. This is entirely unknown to everyone except Chaos, but the building that they have happened upon is the Zohar testing facility that was on Ariadne. Determined to find the others in the Elsa, they fight their way through the facility. When they reach the bottom, they also find the Zohar emulator that was taken from the Woglinde, which is confirmed by KOS-MOS. While she starts explaining that this is the same object, Shion begins to get irritated that KOS-MOS is continuously ignoring her commands and relaying information to them that she was never programmed with. It's at this point that Cherenkov appears and begins phasing in and out of their plane of existence. He had been wandering around the cathedral ship in a daze this entire time and had ended up down here. He knows he's going to die, and before he does, he reveals some details of his involvement with Ariadne's disappearance. Before their eyes, he begins to transform into a Gnosis. As Ziggy watches this, he thinks back to that day on Abraxas 100 years ago. The day when Eric gained new power in front of the Zohar and truly became Voyager. They all readied themselves for battle against the strongest Gnosis they've faced to this point, Gargoyle. Upon their victory, Shion is able to glimpse inside of Cherenkov's consciousness. She sees his indoctrination into Ormus by Margulis, but doesn't entirely understand what it means. Then she's able to briefly speak with him. He tells her all about his life as a soldier and how he struggled to find his purpose in life. Now, faced with death, he's finally at peace. As he fades away, he tells her one day that she'll be content just like him. As Gargoyle dies and turns to dust, Xion falls to her knees, sobbing. She doesn't want to face the reality of the situation, that they killed Cherenkov, or whatever was left of him. She begs to be told that she's imagining things, that this didn't play out in such an awful way. Chaos kneels down with Xion and tells her that the truth isn't always a pleasant thing. He helps her back under her feet and assures her that this will not happen to them. As they begin to leave, the Hilbert effect starts to wear off, and the entire cathedral ship phases in and out. Luckily, before the worst happens, the crew of the Elsa and Alan are able to come to their rescue. As they make their escape from the area, hundreds of Gnosis give chase. Tony puts forth a great amount of effort, but he can't seem to shake any of them off. To their surprise, the Durandal arrives and offers support against the massive horde of Gnosis. Despite the incredible power commanded by Junior, they simply lack the energy reserves to destroy every Gnosis. As everyone on the Elsa's bridge attempts to think of a way out of this predicament, KOS-MOS makes her way to one of the hatches leading outside the ship. Xion orders her to stand down, believing that she's not fully equipped to destroy this many Gnosis. KOS-MOS's eyes change from red to blue, and for the first time, Mary Magdalene's soul is able to shine through. She wonders aloud if feeling pain will make her complete, but no one is able to hear her. The Durandal's main system starts malfunctioning, and all the emulators begin to wake up inside the quarantine hangar. They're beginning to lose control of them. KOS-MOS positions herself on the roof of the Elsa and unleashes her most devastating attack. X-Buster. To everyone's astonishment, KOS-MOS absorbed every single Gnosis in the area. Xion and Alan are especially confused since they know her better than anyone here, and they never programmed KOS-MOS with anything like this. Xion wonders to herself if Kevin was the one who did this. The Durandal retrieves the final Zohar emulator as the Elsa docks in its hangar. As the Durandal prepares to jump back to the Kukai Foundation, Xion introduces herself to Junior, but she feels like there's something wrong. From a distance, Albedo follows the Durandal in his ES Simeon. Based on the recommendations of Sellers, Margulis instructs Albedo to do whatever is necessary to retrieve Momo. Ormus and its fanatic religious ideology has entirely consumed Margulis, to the point where even Pellegrini is surprised at the lengths he's willing to go. Margulis wants Momo back, even if it means using the Song of Nephilim. Without the Y data, they cannot return to Old Miltia, and by proxy, Lost Jerusalem. For now, he asks that Albedo bide his time and wait for the right moment to strike. The next day, Junior takes Xion and the others into the ship's quarantine hangar, and shows them the emulators. Xion is baffled by this, and considering the amount of weaponry that the Durandal is equipped with, she finally asks what the Kukai Foundation even is. Junior gives a bit of a half answer, saying that they used to be part of the Federation, but now they do everything the Federation is too lazy to do. He brings them into the back room where he keeps specimens of people who turned into Gnosis. He explains that, without fail, every single person who comes into contact with them either turns into salt or a Gnosis. This frightens Xion, since she was touched by a Gnosis on the Woglinde. She does not verbalize this concern to anyone, though Alan is able to tell that she's extremely uncomfortable. Junior tells everyone that the Gnosis phenomenon is all Joachim Mizrahi's fault. He calls him a lunatic, and this visibly bothers Momo. She leaves the room while Junior is still talking, trying to understand why people would think that. She refuses to believe that her father was a madman. While it's true that his actions did lead to the Gnosis problem, the idea that he was an evil lunatic is propaganda spread by UTIC and several government agencies. Momo grapples with what Junior has said about her father and sits in the Durandal's park alone until Xion and KOS-MOS come to visit her. She expresses her conflict to them, how she feels about her father compared to how others view him. Both Xion and KOS-MOS explain to Momo that whatever Mizrahi was, he still created many things that helped humanity. This cheers Momo up, but before they can finish their conversation, Alan comes over and says that after the Durandal stops at the Kukai Foundation, they'll bring everyone to Second Miltia. Alan is happy at how convenient this trip has become, but Xion is skeptical about how everyone seems to want to head for Second Miltia. They land at the Kukai Foundation, and to most everyone's surprise, when docked, the Durandal is actually the tallest building on the colony. Though the artificial gravity forces people to travel sideways across the ship, from the outside it looks just like a regular building. After docking, Guinan finally introduces himself to everyone. Upon first meeting him, Xion is hesitant to shake his hand, but she eventually does, scolding herself. Guinan tells Momo that he's been in contact with Yuli and he will make sure that she gets to Second Miltia as requested. After this conversation, Momo begins to realize that Yuli actually does not want to see her. This deeply saddens Momo since she truly does think of Yuli as a mother. After this meeting, Guinan and Junior both discuss all that's happened recently. The immense power that KOS-MOS wields, the status of the Zohar emulators, how the seemingly normal Xion Uzuki may not be so normal, and of course, Momo. The complexity of their relationship to Sakura and Joachim is not lost on the both of them, and Junior suggests keeping her at shoulder's length. At this, Guinan teases him and suggests asking her to go to the beach, which bothers Junior. Before leaving, Guinan gifts Junior a brand new antique handgun that he won in an auction recently, and this seems to placate him for now. After this, Guinan meets with Helmer on a secured line to update him on the recovery of the 12th and final emulator, as well as Momo. The meeting concludes with Guinan warning Helmer to be on guard for any potential UTIC activity. The last thing either of them want is for Udo to be disturbed again. Nearby, Alan is attempting to get Xion to open up to him. He can obviously tell that she's been uneasy lately and wants to help however he can. Unfortunately for him, as soon as he says this, Junior barges in and invites everyone to the beach. At some point while exploring the Foundation, Xion stumbles upon the Robot Academy, a mech workshop run by the professor and his assistant, Scott. They develop giant robots for a living, and after receiving help on their latest project, Erde Kaiser from Xion, Junior, and the others, they eventually move the Robot Academy onto the Elsa, becoming permanent crew members. They all eventually make it to the beach, but while everyone else is having fun, Xion is spending her time running diagnostics on KOS-MOS and thinking of Kevin. Momo and Alan try to get her to focus on something other than work, and the topic of Guinan and Junior's relationship comes up. Though everyone except Chaos is unaware of Rubido and Negreto's status as URTVs, Momo can certainly tell that there's something unique about the two of them. She says that she's observed their genome arrays, and they don't seem to be clones of each other, but they share more than a potential father and son or sibling relationship. Junior overhears the conversation, and Alan freaks out, changing the topic to be about the artificial beach that the Foundation has created. To show off the flexibility of their newest product, Junior changes the weather to a thunderstorm in an instant. Everyone looks on in amazement. Everyone, that is, except Xion. Xion hates thunder. She has a detrimental fear of it, and for good reason. The night of the Miltian conflict and the night that Kevin was killed by KOS-MOS both had thunderstorms.
I'm sorry. I just really hate thunder.
Everyone returns to the Durandal, and Alan attempts to get Xion to open up again, but she denies that there's even anything wrong. At some point during their visit to the Kukai Foundation, Momo and Junior go on a walk together in the park. As they're talking, they're ambushed by Richard, an agent of Ormus. He has come to take Momo away. Together, both Momo and Junior are able to fend off his attack, and before long, his partner Herman arrives to bring him back to base. Junior and Momo pursue the two alongside the crew of the Elsa after reading some data from discs that were left behind during the struggle. The data on these discs contains images of dead 100 series Realians and a set of coordinates leading to the planet Margita. The group arrives on the planet, and Junior is kidnapped by Richard and Herman. Thankfully, Xion, KOS-MOS, Ziggy, and Chaos arrive after hearing that the Elsa has left the Foundation without a word. They manage to rescue Junior and fight Richard and Herman, who are piloting Ames. After disabling their mechs, KOS-MOS manages to defeat Herman in hand-to-hand combat, and the group heads back to the Foundation. After returning to the Kukai Foundation, Junior gives Momo a good luck charm as a gift. It's a bullet from one of his antique guns, engraved with the words, "Sayonara, baby." He attaches it to a chain with some of his power, and Momo puts it on her wrist. The Kukai Foundation is then entirely surrounded by a fleet from the Galaxy Federation. They are there to take complete control of the Foundation and arrest all high-ranking members. The Federation believes that the Durandal was responsible for the destruction of the Woglinde. Not only that, but that it colluded with Second Miltia to do so. Contrary to the reports from Xion and Alan, and to the disbelief of everyone on board, a video has surfaced that actually shows the Durandal committing the crime. Junior concludes that when he fought Utic in that area, they must have recorded the battle and used their knowledge of the coordinates to doctor the video. Shelley suggests that Utic agents have wormed their way into the Galaxy Federation at multiple levels, which is entirely true. Shortly after, the vessel is boarded by Federation soldiers, and all occupants are placed under arrest by Commanding Officer Lapis Roman. While Xion and the others are locked in a single room, KOS-MOS is taken into custody with her pod, and Guinan is brought elsewhere by Lapis, who hands him a phone. On the other end is Helmer, who explains that years ago he tasked Lapis with infiltrating the Federation military to keep tabs on any possible Utic activity. Luckily, this has paid off, and Guinan is told to work with her to download the Durandal's data. This way, they have it copied before anyone from Utic can alter it and make it impossible to prove the Foundation's innocence. Helmer hangs up and takes a call from Wilhelm, who is as two-faced as ever. He claims to express concern over the situation and promises to put in a good word with the Miltian government for him. He also informs Helmer that he is flying Vector's main ship, the Damarung, out to Second Miltia to help in any way he can. The Damarung is massive, over 1,000 kilometers long. The size is so indescribable that some consider it an artificial planet. Wilhelm even offers to lend KOS-MOS to Guinan temporarily. Helmer, oblivious to the fact that all of this has been carefully orchestrated by Wilhelm himself, offers his deepest thanks and ends the conversation none the wiser. Lapis enters the room that everyone is being held in and puts all the cards on the table. She works for Representative Helmer, and they only have a matter of hours before backup arrives and takes Momo away. This entire situation was orchestrated specifically so Utic could take her back. Unfortunately, the format that the Durandal's data has been encoded with is easily tampered with, and not concrete enough evidence in a court of law. She asks if anyone knows of another way that the Woglinde's battle data could have been recorded. After a few ideas are thrown around, Xion realizes that KOS-MOS has the entire encounter recorded with AAA encryption stored in her databanks. In order to access this data, however, they need to dive into KOS-MOS's encephalon and copy it. Alan raises a number of safety concerns, but no one has any better ideas. Lapis asks that they knock her out so she isn't exposed as a double agent, and the group makes their way across the ship to KOS-MOS's maintenance pod. Xion intends on diving into the encephalon alone, but Nephilim is somehow able to pull everyone else in as well. The encephalon has taken on the form of Miltia 14 years prior. Upon entry, the group is split up. Xion, Chaos, and Alan encounter Nephilim, who is finally ready to speak with them after all this time. She explains that KO-S-MOS is able to sense some of Xion's most hated memories and has recreated them. In order for Xion to truly grow, KO-S-MOS believes that these memories must be faced. Nephilim also suggests that KO-S-MOS wants to go to Old Miltia, and Xion, frustrated at this suggestion, storms off, followed by Alan, leaving Chaos and Nephilim by themselves.
Are you sure this is what you want? There is no turning back.
I know, but Xion is vital to her.
And to you as well? What will you do?
Ziggy and Momo follow Junior as he relives the URTV's mission during the Miltian conflict. Much like Xion, he must confront his demons in order to move forward. He witnesses the violence and destruction caused by his corrupted siblings, and at the very moments leading up to his rescue. Eventually, they stumble upon Joachim Mizrahi, mere seconds before his demise. Momo watches in disbelief as her father makes his final crazed speech and falls to his death. After witnessing this, the floor dissipates beneath them, and they're transported to a forest where they reconnect with Xion, Chaos, and Alan. They arrive at a church which seems very familiar to Xion. Inside is Fabronia, Mizrahi's first transgenic Realian. Xion feels like she may know her, but she doesn't want to remember anything from that time in her life. Nephilim appears and ushers the group through a door in the church. She's honest when she says that behind the door is an experience full of pain, but one that they must face nonetheless. When they cross the threshold, they bear witness to the aftermath of the deaths of Xion's parents. Junior, however, is forced to rewatch Albedo's psyche shatter from his contact with Udu. A Gnosis appears at the center of the room, and after a hard battle, Xion and Junior deal the killing blow together. In a flash of bright light, the group is transported to a beautiful field with a large tree in the center. A vision of two girls playing tag around the tree while Fabronia watches plays in the background. Nephilim and Fabronia explain that what they're seeing is not real, and the lush landscape fades away into a field of craters and dirt. Fabronia reveals to everyone that this is what her sisters, Cecily and Kath, truly experience in their minds. She tells of their horrific fates and how they're permanently linked with the Zohar. She requests that Xion go to Cecily and Kath to free them from this prison. Nephilim shows them another vision, this time of KO-S-MOS floating above a planet. The planet fires a beam of red energy, and KO-S-MOS fires a beam of blue energy. The two streams meet, and this causes the entire universe to be destroyed. Nephilim reveals that the red energy is Udu, the main cause of the space-time anomaly around Old Miltia. What she has shown them is a vision of the future. KO-S-MOS and Udu will do battle and destroy everything. After leaving them with more cryptic messaging, Nephilim and Fabronia disappear and open the path forward. While they do not fully understand what's happening, their objective is clear. Return to Miltia so they can free Cecily and Kath and change the future. When they walk through the door before them, they're transported into an old cave and see KO-S-MOS hanging from a cross bound with wire. Xion approaches her, touching her face, and instinctively says, "Ye shall be as gods." This disarms KO-S-MOS's encryption, and the party is transported back to the real world. Alan, relieved that Xion is completely unscathed, runs over and hugs her, much to Xion's confusion. Thanks to Helmer's help, KO-S-MOS's data has been retrieved, and the charges against Second Miltia and the Kukai Foundation have been dropped. Rather than be excited at the prospect, Junior is uneasy about what he has learned. Not only will he have to contend with Udu again, but hearing the name Nephilim naturally makes him think of the song that bears the same name. To celebrate their freedom, Alan finally musters up the courage to ask Xion out for dinner. However, she rejects his offer. She locks herself away in her room and attempts to rationalize the day's events. Alan and Chaos sit together in the park as Alan vents. This ordeal caused Xion to cry. The only other time Alan can recall seeing her cry is when Kevin died. He laments being unable to help her through anything and fears that she'll never let him in. Chaos says that even though they've only known each other a short time, he can tell that Alan has a good heart, and that one day he will be able to help Shion. Now that yet another attempt to recover Momo has failed, Margulis, desperate, finally instructs Albedo to act. He orders him to go to the Song of Nephilim, activate its cloaking device, bring it to Miltian airspace, and play the Song of Nephilim itself. Only Junior, Guinan, and Chaos can hear the song, and know what's happening. Gnosis begin flooding into the area. They destroy Federation ships and make their way onto the Foundation. A state of emergency is declared, and Junior orders all citizens to be evacuated onto the Durandal. Shion tells KOS-MOS to activate the Hilbert effect in order to assist the evacuation. The party heads down to the Foundation and rescues as many people as they can. Momo briefly stays behind to treat the wounds of a woman, but unfortunately, this is exactly what Albedo has been waiting for. While she's all alone, he snatches her up and takes her to the Song of Nephilim. Momo wakes up in a hallway with partial amnesia. She doesn't remember how she got here, or even where here is. She finds a nearly dead Kirschwasser mangled and slumped over. Since Momo considers them like sisters, she is deeply upset by this. She wishes that she could have been able to talk to her, and maybe even learn more about her father. With the last of her strength, the Kirschwasser manages to transmit some data to Momo before collapsing. A vision of Joachim Mizrahi developing Momo, and another of the Kirschwasser being beaten to death by Albedo. As she walks through the halls of the song, to her horror, Momo stumbles upon a room littered with the bodies of dead Kirschwassers. This is where Albedo has been waiting for her. He makes a speech to her about the frailty of humanity, how they desire to avoid annihilation, but ironically are too powerless to stop it. He begins calling her Ma Belle Pêche, French for my beautiful peach. During his manic diatribe, he pulls out a knife and brings it close to Momo's face, only to turn it on himself and cut off his own arm. Before her eyes, Albedo's arm regenerates, and she falls to the floor in fear. Amused by her terror, Albedo then cuts off his own head and lets it fall to the floor. He's able to glimpse into her mind and see that she wants Junior to save her. In his mind, Rubido has inserted himself into the life of the vessel meant for Sakura. Beyond the grave, Sakura has once again gotten between himself and Rubido. Out of anger, he stomps on his own head. This proves too much for Momo, and she passes out from the sheer stress of everything. With all the commotion, it takes several hours before anyone realizes that Momo is gone. While everyone is trying to keep an eye out for her, that becomes a lower priority once the Federation changes their target to the Kukai Foundation itself. Since he's unable to hear the Song of Nephilim, the commanding officer believes that the Gnosis are attracted to the Foundation specifically. So he orders all units to destroy what he believes the source of the problem is, despite no approval to do so. On the bridge of the Durandal, Shion finally begins to hear the song, which fascinates and terrifies Junior and Guinan. After some back and forth telepathic communication, they both come to the conclusion that their brother Albedo is still alive and he's here. Just before the Federation is able to commence their attack, the Damarung gates out, and Wilhelm activates the Rhine Maiden. The Rhine Maiden is Vector's newly completed anti-Gnosis weapon. It fires a massive stream of sonic waves that disintegrates all Gnosis. And that's exactly what happened. All Gnosis in the area were completely destroyed. Shion and Alan's co-worker Miyuki sends a phase transfer cartridge from the Damarung to the bridge of the Durandal through the UMN. She says that this will be able to reveal whatever's been attracting the Gnosis to the area. Shion doesn't want to use it since the phase transition that it causes could wipe out everything in the area. KOS-MOS explains that if she were to activate the device, she could localize the effect in such a way that the Federation fleet and the Kukai Foundation would be protected. After some convincing from Junior and Ziggy, she allows KOS-MOS to scan the area and fire her phase transfer cannon.
Shelly, are the anti-electromagnetic shields ready?
Preparations are complete. You may fire at will.
Roger. KOS-MOS, fire the phase transfer cannon.
As the Song of Nephilim is revealed, Albedo begins assaulting Momo's consciousness. He's looking for Mizrahi's Y data, and while that is his main objective, he plans on making her writhe in pain every step of the way. The crew of the Durandal is finally able to determine that Momo is aboard the Song of Nephilim. Junior and Guinan reveal that she was likely taken by someone named Albedo, and that he's looking to obtain the Y data within her, but they do not elaborate much. Upon hearing this, Ziggy decides that he'll go rescue her by himself, but Junior stops him. He wants to save Momo as well. Ziggy believes that Junior will be unable to put his emotions aside when confronting Albedo. If he cannot, he says that he'll only be a liability. As he says this, he thinks back 100 years prior to when he watched as Voyager killed his family right in front of him. After a brief discussion, it's decided that Shion, KOS-MOS, Ziggy, Junior, and Chaos will go and rescue Momo together. They board the Elsa and fly towards the massive space station. As they pass by the top of it, Shion realizes that she was able to see the Song of Nephilim from her mother's hospital window as a child. As they make their way through the massive satellite, they find Momo alone in a hallway, completely devoid of personality. Junior vows to make Albedo pay and attempts to get everyone else to leave, saying that this is between him and Albedo, but they refuse to abandon the mission. They push onward to where Albedo is waiting and find that he has the real Momo on his lap. The Momo that they had been traveling with was a Kirschwasser in disguise, linked with Momo's consciousness. Albedo orders her to choke Junior while his guard is down. He destroys the Kirschwasser and shoots Albedo in the arm, but he simply regenerates the destroyed tissue. He mocks Junior and starts assaulting Momo's mind in front of everyone. Junior shoots again and again, but he effortlessly shrugs off all damage. Shion and Ziggy are floored by what they're seeing. They have never witnessed anyone be able to regenerate body parts like this. Chaos uses the opportunity to tell everyone of Junior, Guinan, and Albedo's status as URTVs, anti-Udu weapons. Albedo delves even further into Momo's mind, teasing that he's almost gotten through all of the protection inside of her. Unable to control his rage, Junior activates Red Dragon mode, and the resulting energy knocks Albedo back and Momo onto the floor. Albedo takes this moment to look around the room. As his eyes land on KOS-MOS and Shion, he breaks out in laughter. He seemingly knows the true nature of KOS-MOS and Shion as well. He boards ES Simeon and attacks the party. After the fight, Junior and Albedo begin unleashing their full power. Albedo urges Junior to push harder and harder, but Chaos tells him to stop. As the two stare each other down, Momo regains consciousness and crawls to the injured Kirschwasser. She looks up at Momo and tells her that all Kirschwassers envy Momo for the way that Mizrahi looked at her, how Momo was the clear favorite, and they were nothing but imitations. Momo is disheartened by this and watches as her sister dies in front of her. She looks over to see Junior and Albedo's energy levels rising at an alarming rate. She gets in between the two of them and diffuses the situation. Momo tries to understand why Albedo would use and abuse all of her sisters, but Albedo just mocks her and says that they all suffered because of her existence. Shion speaks up and insults him for his behavior, but before she can finish her sentence, a figure descends from above. One that would be all too familiar to Ziggy. A testament. The Blue Testament to be specific. Unbeknownst to everyone, the secret identity of whom is Luis Virgil. He allows for Albedo's escape in ES Simeon by constructing a force field in front of himself. As Albedo flies from the Song of Nephilim, he continues to search through Momo's mind. He has embedded himself so deep within her subconscious that he is now able to access it from anywhere. He's about to obtain the Y data when figures of KOS-MOS and Xion prevent him from doing anything else. He cannot proceed any further at the moment. The Blue Testament, meanwhile, transforms into a Gnosis and attacks the party. After the battle, the Testament is completely unaffected, but everyone else is exhausted. Certain of Albedo's safety, the Blue Testament turns to leave, but not before being asked by Xion why he's doing this. He gives her a cryptic answer about how she needs to go to the correct time and place before saying her name and teleporting away. The group leaves the Song of Nephilim after they successfully stop the transmission of the song itself. Back on the Durandal, Momo thanks Junior for rescuing her and suggests that the good luck charm he gave her may have something to do with it. They aim their cannons at the Song of Nephilim to destroy it for good, however, the blasts bounce right off of it. Some of the remaining Gnosis in the area are absorbed into the song, and Albedo appears in his ES yet again and starts a transmission with the Durandal. He uses the energy produced by the Gnosis to summon the Proto-Merkaba from the Abyss. Momo recognizes it as the place that she was created. What little of the data he was able to find in Momo led Albedo to the conclusion that the Song of Nephilim was designed by Mizrahi to be docked into the Proto-Merkaba to create a super weapon. Despite the fact that he lacks access to the original Zohar, the Proto-Merkaba still commands incredible power on its own. He displays that by annihilating the entire fleet of Federation ships, save the Damarung. He recharges the energy reserves by absorbing all remaining Gnosis and Miltian space. Albedo mocks Junior and begins laughing maniacally at the situation. His next target is Second Miltia, and he invites Junior to come and stop him before ending the transmission. On behalf of the entire Federation government and humanity as a whole, Yuli Mizrahi begs for Junior and his newfound friends to destroy the abominable machine that is the Proto-Merkaba once and for all. The party boards the Elsa once again and heads for the Proto-Merkaba. As they travel through the bowels of the massive weapon, Momo asks if she's an abomination. She was created by Joachim Mizrahi here. She wonders at the nature of her birth and if everyone who died on Miltia perished just so she could be created. Xion, in uncertain language, tells her that even though Momo is a Realian, her mother certainly does not see her as an abomination. Surely, she says, no parent could ever see their child as an abomination. After a long and arduous journey, the party finally reaches the core of the facility where Albedo is waiting. He unleashes his true power and does battle with Junior and the others. With everyone worn down, Albedo finally confronts Junior with the reality of why he's doing this. To Junior's face, he blames him for the current circumstances. If he hadn't broken their link on Miltia years ago, none of this would be happening. Junior tries to accept responsibility, but it's too little too late for Albedo. All of this is to accomplish the goal that he's longed for more than anything. To finally die and descend to another plane of existence. Albedo opens the main reactor and reveals that he's fused a Gnosis with it, creating one of the most powerful Gnosis to ever exist. Using this as a distraction, he retreats and leaves the Proto-Merkaba. Xion and the others face a fight unlike anything they've ever had to in their lives, and are fortunately successful. Albedo has another trick up his sleeve though. Since he can no longer fire the weapon at Second Miltia, he's activated the thrusters so that the entire station will fall onto the planet below, completely destroying it. The group decides to head to the control room on KOS-MOS and Momo's suggestion. If they break up the Proto-Merkaba into thousands of smaller pieces, they'll burn up in the atmosphere. Momo soon discovers, though, that the command to detach the subcompartments can only be done from within this room, and there's a maximum of a 1-minute timer. KOS-MOS instructs everyone to go ahead of her. She elects to stay behind while Xion and the others get to safety. She is confident that she will be able to make it back to the Elsa in time. Xion is hesitant, but eventually leaves KOS-MOS and runs off with the others. They sprint to the docking bay and enter the Elsa as quickly as possible. Junior tells the crew to prepare for liftoff since they still need to wait for KOS-MOS, but as debris begins striking the ship, The decision is made to leave. KOS-MOS is simply taking too long. Shion begs Matthews to turn the ship around and get her, but he refuses. It's just too dangerous. From within Shion's mind, Nephilim speaks to her and says to see with her heart. Shion is able to sense that KOS-MOS is nearby and asks Tony to move the Elsa close to the port side wall. At this moment, KOS-MOS blasts through the wall and grabs Shion's hand. With Ziggy's help, they're able to pull her aboard. Tony's expert piloting is able to get them out of the crumbling superweapon, but they're not out of the woods yet. The debris from the Proto-Merkaba has damaged the ship's controls, and Tony is unable to steer the Elsa for a proper landing. They're entering Second Miltia's atmosphere at an extremely dangerous angle. If something isn't done, they'll disintegrate before long. Chaos sits by himself in the cargo bay, alone with his thoughts, debating whether or not he should do something. For so long, he's been scared of his power, and even in a situation as dire as this, he hesitates to act. Just then, KOS-MOS walks by him and exits the ship. Mary Magdalene's soul has returned once again. She uses her shields to protect the Elsa and its passengers, as Shion screams at the top of her lungs to stop, since this will likely kill her. Before the outer cameras cut, she says that she was happy to be of service, and her visor breaks off. Chaos, inspired by Mary's will, finally activates his power of anima and helps her save the Elsa. To the disbelief of everyone on board, they're all alive, including KOS-MOS. As the pieces of the Proto-Merkaba fall to the planet below, Jin Uzuki is visiting the graves of his parents. He watches from afar as the Elsa heads for the capital of Second Miltia. Guinan relays his concerns of Utik to Helmer, confident that they will be coming for Second Miltia soon. Albedo gates out with his ES Simeon and begins lying in wait yet again. As soon as Momo connects to the UMN, he'll be able to access the secrets of the Y data. And as all of this unfolds, Wilhelm watches patiently from his compass of order and chaos, while the Red Testament stands before him. Wilhelm's plans are falling into place. All the players are exactly where he wants them. But this is only the beginning.